This is TWiT.
I think we got to talk about the Cybertruck because this was kind of a big week for the Cybertruck. Say what you will about the Cybertruck, but it's actually happening. And I know over the last couple of years, people have been like, wondering / doubting, like, are we ever going to see the Tesla Cybertruck? Apparently, there was a delivery event that was live streamed earlier this week. Select customers, people like, I don't know, Alexis Ohanian. So, big namers, I imagine, to get the press, got theirs, I guess. It's been 6 years since the first tweet of the Cybertruck happened. And Tim, you wrote all about the Cybertruck. You said, don't hate the Cybertruck, hate the game. Tell us about it.
There's been a lot of backlash about the Cybertruck, and certainly I've been, responsible for some of that myself, because it's hard to not be disappointed by how long this took. I mean, it was promised. It was launched in 2019. I was at the event there where they rolled the thing out and where they, famously threw the giant steel ball at the glass and broke the window. I was there, and the initial promise was a $40,000 truck that'll do 250 miles of range, or I think it was the high end was going to be $69,000 for the 500-mile range truck. What we instead got was a 250-mile truck for $61,000 on the low end. That's the cheapest one. Or if you want an all-wheel drive Cyber Beast, you're going to be spending $100,000, and none of them are going to go 500 miles of range. The only way that you're going to get close to that is if you pay extra for an additional battery pack that will fit in the trunk of the truck, and that will ultimately decrease your cargo space and make this truck that's already, I think, knocking on 7,000 pounds, it'll make it even heavier. Okay. So substantially more expensive, at least 50% more expensive than was anticipated, with less range than was promised. And of course, it's wildly late. It's also, the build quality of those initial cars is, as expected, not very good from what we've seen so far. And it's hard not to be disappointed. But ultimately, my reaction to this isn't so much about the state of the truck. We all knew it was not going to be as good as what Musk promised 4 years ago. The fact is, Tesla's still going to sell every one of these things that they can make. Tesla is ultimately going to make a lot of money on this thing. And to me, it's pretty disappointing that ultimately there's going to be no accountability for those missed dates, those failed promises. Now, this will just be another success story for Tesla down the road that will ultimately just encourage Elon Musk to continue on making bombastic promises that prove to be completely false, and no one's ever going to be held accountable for, which is a little bit unfortunate to me. And I also think it's a bit of a bummer that this is basically a giant rolling brick with no kind of creature comforts involved, or no sensibilities when it comes to actually working as a truck. And none of the tests we've seen so far have been focused on hauling cargo, towing things, going off-road, any of that stuff. It's all been about how quickly can it go down a quarter mile? Is it faster than the Hummer? Stuff like that. And that to me is a little bit boring. Yeah.
I mean, if it's a truck, compare it against things I want to do with the truck. That makes a lot of sense. I like that you called it a giant rolling brick. That's my new favorite way of referring to the Cybertruck. Abrar, is the Cybertruck in your future? Do you have what are your thoughts on this thing?
I've actually got one in the driveway right now.
Oh, you were one of the people. Well, that's the lead right there. We buried it.
Goodbye, Bart. This is my new way of getting around town.
There you go. The obvious second to Bart is the Cybertruck.
Obviously. No, it's fascinating to watch the social media storm as all of this unravels. And it's I don't know. I mean, I'm not a car person. I can just tell you I think it's ugly. And that's the insight that I can give you today. That's all I can contribute.
That's about most of what I could contribute to. Every time I look at it, I keep waiting for there to be some sort of refinement of something. I'm not sure what it is, but to my eyes, it just never looks right. What do you think, Rich?
I don't know. I'm trying to collect my thoughts on this Cybertruck. Tim painted a pretty grim future for this thing. But I live in Los Angeles. I think that, and Alexis lives here. I think, one of the first buyers, I think he's here in LA. And so I just see this as a car that is a showpiece for eccentricity, and people will get it because it looks different. It's unique. It looks like something out of a sci-fi, movie. And I think that's where it ends. I think that with Tesla, they have used a lot of the knowledge they gained from building the millions of Teslas out there, and that enabled them to make this platform. Yes, it's not as good as we had hoped with the mileage and the price and all of that stuff. But I think this just goes to show, I don't know. Again, I'm like, I just don't really understand like the reasoning behind this thing. Like, what is it just for fun? Like you said, we're not really promoting, like nobody's getting this to tow their boat, or to like actually work or anything like that with a pickup in the back. So it's interesting, but I think that to me, it's not that exciting.
Tim, in your piece that you just that you published today about this, you linked to the your first write-up from 4 years ago when we kind of got some interesting some more information about this, and you mentioned that you were swept up in the hype of the moment. What excited you about the Cybertruck back then? And I'm assuming that your current state of kind of view on the Cybertruck is because they didn't live up to that. What do we not have here that it seemed, at least at the time, that they were going to deliver on?
Yeah, I mean, we have to remember this was 2019. This was years before even the Rivian R1T came out. The F-150 Lightning didn't exist. There really was no electric trucks on the market at all. So this was a completely novel product at the time. So the fact that it was an EV with any semblance of the productivity of a truck was promising just from the beginning. And then the idea that it would be priced less than $40,000, which was about the same price as a base F-150 at the time, and do 250 miles of range, which is quite good, that made it a really, really compelling product. And that's why I think we saw so many of those initial pre-orders come out, because this was going to be, on par with the price of a base F-150 effectively for this wild-looking, high-performance, all-electric truck. And so even though I thought it was pretty ugly at the time, I was very excited by the potential, and I genuinely really wanted one. But fast forward 4 years, now it costs $70,000 instead. Now that we have the F-150 Lightning on the market and doing reasonably well, at least from a standpoint, and having the F-150 that is a product that is designed from the outset to be a practical, usable thing, that they've put a lot of thought into how can we make a truck that is the kind of thing that can go to a job site, that can power a job site, that can keep a contractor from having to rent a generator, for example. They can just use their truck to power the job site. They can charge tools in the front as they're driving to that job site, stuff like that. A lot of smarts went into the F-150 that are based on 100 years of making trucks for people that want to get actual work done. And I also respect that. Whereas the Cybertruck is basically, like I said, Jason, it's a big toy. And so it's basically a big ugly sports car. And so, if you want to buy a sports car
forever, a big ugly sports
right.
car.
I mean, if you want a sports car, why do you want something that is that ponderously large? If you want something that goes quick, fine, buy a sports car, buy a Model S Plaid, buy something like that is more optimized for doing that kind of thing. Why do you need to make a 7,000-pound car go 0 to 60 in 2.9 seconds? It's ultimately because they can. And there is this kind of growing segment within the truck industry. It's kind of taken over the truck industry of creating these massively unnecessarily large, chrome-plated, incredibly overpriced luxury trucks that are absolutely far bigger than are needed. And ultimately, again, you can draw parallels to sports cars. The sports cars are faster than you need and that kind of thing. But when you're talking about a really large truck that is unnecessarily large, you're talking about actually creating safety issues for everybody else on the road. Whereas a little sports car, if you screw up in your sports car, you might go crash in a ditch. You might hurt yourself. If you crash in a 7,000-pound Cybertruck, you're probably going to create some real damage for a lot of folks around you too. And that's a little bit what I'm kind of getting into. Instead of just being a demonstration of your hubris or your ego, now you're actually being a bit of a public menace potentially, and I'm curious to see what happens.
You could say the same thing about driving an Escalade or Suburban or any of these.
Absolutely.
I mean, and I think for the occupant inside, and I'm not sure what the safety rating is of the Cybertruck, but I'm sure Teslas generally are very safe in crashes. But I think there's a bigger thing happening in America with this obsession with cars that we don't need and size that we don't need. And when I saw I actually had a similar reaction to the electric Hummer when I saw that. I'm like, what is the purpose of this? Like the Hummer brand at some point when gas was 99 cents was, the car to have. And here in Los Angeles, it was everywhere. And now if you see one, if someone, purchased one and whatever, they still have it. It's like, you see that as like, wait, seriously? And with the electric, I'm just like, I didn't really understand that change. Like that, to me, that just meant like excess. And all of a sudden now you're bringing an electric brand. Like, I feel like companies should be smarter than this. And maybe it's just what people want. But to me, it just seems weird that you would bring that Hummer brand to an EV. And it just means to me that people just want it to show off. Hey, I have a Hummer and it's electric and cool. It's got a moon foot in the, whatever. They had like that secret moon stamp in the wheel well or something. I don't remember what they told me about that. Anyway, I love seeing those giant trucks though, Tim, the ones you were talking about. It's like the American edition or all. It's just like, it's literally like a $200,000 truck that is going down the freeway. And it's just like, this has never seen a speck of dirt in like an actual like truck area. It's just like, you have this giant truck because it's, again, excess.
Yeah. Where I live out in the country, I see, trucks are probably the majority of the cars that I see on the road, and a substantial percentage of those are HD trucks, the 2500s, 3500s, that kind of thing. And yeah, it's mostly just dudes commuting to work.
Right. It's a commute vehicle. It's just a really big one, and it matches my personality. Something like that.
Yeah, that's what a lot of. But sports cars are the same way. I mean, come on, it's like cars have this thing where it's just like, it's not just a way to get around. If it was, we'd all be driving a little tiny smart car. Cars are an extension of someone's personality. And in America, especially, people like different things and they like stuff that they think reflects them. And it's just how it is. And I guess these companies definitely play to that. And that's what the Cybertruck is doing.
Yeah, and I totally appreciate that. And I think that ultimately trucks should reflect your personality. Otherwise, it would be a pretty boring place. But at the end of the day, my concern is when it becomes a safety issue. And when we look at these 2500 trucks and things like that, the sightlines in them are really, really bad. I had the Silverado 2500 HD not that long ago. And the hood line is basically at my chin level when you stand, when I stood next to it. And that is incredibly tall on a truck that has no need to be that tall, because if you pop the hood on it, the engine is sitting a good 6 inches below the hood. And there's a hood scoop on the front that you think, oh, well, that hood scoop there is, making sure that the engine stays cool. Actually, no, the hood scoop is completely blocked off. It's just there for looks. So there's absolutely no need for that truck to be as big as it is. It's just therefore, inflating effectively the ego of the owner. And that's unfortunate. I remember a long time ago when PCs were first going mainstream, Walmart did a study, and they found that people would pay more for a larger PC. So there was a while there that Walmart was selling these really big PC cases, and then you'd open them up and there'd be nothing inside of them. And that's all that I can remember is that kind of thing when I look at these 2500 trucks and HD trucks that are just wearing all this egregious extra bodywork just to make them look big and macho and tough, when in reality, they're really not that much more capable than a much smaller, much more affordable truck. So when we get to the point where the size, the expression of your character is becoming a bit of a risk to those around you, I think at that point there has to be something done. I don't think, someone driving their Porsche, may be outrageously quick, but the shape of that Porsche is not necessarily causing a risk to anybody else around them. And that's what I'm concerned about here.
That's a really great point. It really, and especially going back to your comment or your label as an oversized brick, or however you put that, just the density and the mass of that giant brick moving down the road. If something happens, that's going to create a different type of damage than the standard vehicle that might get into an accident.
Tech Break is brought to you by our friends at IT Pro TV, now called ACI Learning. ACI's newest product, Insights, assists in closing lucrative skill gaps so your team won't fall behind. Empower your team, outmaneuver threats, and gain essential insight into your business. Visit go.acilearning.com/twit today. Twit listeners can receive up to 65% off an IT Pro Enterprise Solution Plan. The discount is based on the size of your team when you fill out their form.